Hi guys, welcome today. I wanted to create this video for those of you that have been buying some of our embroidery kits. These little kits are made with DMC floss. They're 4-inch hoops. You can buy the kits individually. Right now we have just the bluebird listed, but we'll be adding the rest. And you can make it into a tree ornament. You can create a little soft stitch book like I did with all of our birds in it. I entitled mine Advice from Backyard Birds. Has all of our birdies in it, as you can see. And my little granddaughter just loved this little book and just stitched it with fabric and leftovers that I had around the house in my little stash. So I've had some questions about stitching, and I want to make sure that this is available for those of you that are newbies to embroidery, because birds are really popular, and these little bird kits have just been flying off the shelf. So I wanted to show you just some of the basic stitches that we use in case you're not familiar. There are tons of videos on YouTube that will talk to you about these stitches and teach you these stitches. This one's called the back stitch. This is just maybe when you're outlining something and you're going around the edge, you're wanting to define the edge a little bit more before you fill in with other stitches. And so you can see we just come up from underneath the fabric, and then we go right back to the last stitch that was left there. And again, good way to outline something that you might want to outline. You don't have to always do it exactly like our kits suggest. Those are just suggestions, but because you might want to add your own little embroidery flair. So these are just basic stitches that we use, and again, that one's called the back stitch. The next one is called the stem stitch, and on the stem stitch, we actually have used it several times, mostly on this little stitch that looks like a stem or a vine that goes around the bluebird. It gives it just a little bit more of a raised look, and it's kind of twisted a little bit. We start the same way. We come up from underneath. We're going to go back down through, but we're going to stop. I like to just hold on to the thread. Now I bring my needle up between the two, and then I pull it. Just kind of hold my needle off to the side. Again, coming up in between, halfway, to make that little viney looking stem. I can use these on flowers, again, to outline if you gives it a little more raised look. But very basic stitch called the stem stitch. Okay. So that's the stem stitch. The next one we're going to do is the split stitch. And a split stitch, again, can be used in a variety of ways. Again, just to add a little more texture. This time it's kind of similar to the stem stitch. I didn't put a knot back there. I'm just going to hold on to it. Bring it back down. Let it come all the way down, and then you're going to bring your needle up right between and split the stitches in the middle. So instead of holding it off to the side like I did there, you're going to go ahead and make that stitch, and then you're going to come right up and split the stitches. And again, another way to create some texture, a different look. Very similar in appearance to a stem stitch, but doesn't have the twisted effect that a stem stitch has. And so when you get our patterns, it will tell you the floss number, especially if you buy the digital download. It'll tell you the floss color to buy and what stitch we used on each of these. I'm going to do the leaf stitch next. There's a variety of leaf stitches out there. This is the one that we use. In this case, I've used two-tone, and so I'm going to show you with one color, and then I'll come back to this and explain how that's different. So in this one, I think I'm going to use the green again. I'll make sure I've got enough. Maybe I'll use Yeah, I use the green. So we have our leaf here. It's a pretty big leaf. I'm just going to come up a little bit like so. And I'm going to come right to the point. And I like to start in the middle. Then I'm going to come back up just right below where I stitched that first. And I'm going to come to the right, just to the right of this stitch. And I'm going to stay on the line so it drops down just a tad. Come back. And now I'm going to move to the other side. And so as you make this leaf, you're kind of creating a fan look. Eventually, you want to have a lot more floss than I have on this one. But you just continue moving your way around, and you'll see that you're working your way down the side of the leaf. And again, like I said, there's a variety of leaf stitches out there, but you can kind of see that makes it fan out, and you just keep working your way around and around and around, and then just finish the edge however you want. I just shortened a little bit. This one was pretty big. So that is a leaf stitch, a very basic leaf stitch. Now you can tell, like I said, this one has two colors. So instead of going back and forth, you're going to go up to the point, and then just come back and work your way down the side of the stitch, side of the leaf, until you get to a point where everything's covered, and then just take your needle down underneath, pull it out the back, and knot it, and then go to the other side. And that way you've got your leaf stitch. The next thing is a satin stitch. And a satin stitch is what we use to fill in many times. It's just like a little filler. Let me show you a satin stitch here. On the Blue Jay, we have satin stitches. We've just, on some of these, we've just filled in little areas. On our flower for our little goldfinch, we just have a satin stitch. It's very similar to the leaf stitch. You're going from one side to the other. So I've got this little area right here. And again, you want to keep your borders wherever they are, you know, as uniform as possible. You also don't want your floss twisting. And this is a pretty long piece of floss because I might use it for another one that I want to show you. Normally you can cut about an 18-inch length of floss, and we use all 6 strands, by the way. We're not splitting our strands. If you want a more defined look, you don't want so much bulk, you can always split and do a 3-strand rather than a 6-strand. And we're just working our way around. We want to make sure that we don't pull really, really tight, because then you're going to bunch, you're going to squeeze that fabric together, and we don't want that to happen. We want everything to be nice and smooth and neat. Okay, if you feel like you've bunched them up, just stick your needle under there and give it a little shift. Sometimes you can do that too if you want like a raised look. If you're working on a branch like this, and you want that branch, it's a satin stitch, but you want it to have more of a raised 3D look, you can do that as well with your needle. Okay, so that one is the satin stitch. Now for a French knot, I'm going to show you 2 ways that we made our French knot. The first way is just with our 6 strands of thread, okay, and we're going to come up, pull it through, and we're going to wind it 3 times. And then we're going to put our needle down, hold on to your thread, and very carefully pull it through so we don't get any other knots forming. And so that's a French knot. This is with the 6 strand. We did this one on the cardinal. I will show you what that looks like. Because with these, the French knots on the cardinal were buds, like in a flower, but they were a little thinner, kind of like the robin. His little buds are thin. We clustered them together for the middle of the flower. But now on the bluebird, they're a little more substantial because we just wanted one and we wanted it bigger. So in this case, you're just gonna take your thread, your floss, and you're gonna double it and knot it at the end. So now you're working with 12 strands of floss instead of 6 strands. All right, so let me show you the difference then. 1, 2, 3. And then we just bring it through. It's a little bit bigger. I've got those two are close together, so it might make it a little more difficult to see. Okay, let me go back down. And it just makes a bigger knot, stands up a little higher too. So that is the French knot. Now, as far as the bird goes, when we're creating bird feathers, someone was asking me, what direction do you go in? And on a bird, we tend to look at it like the way a hair would grow, or, you know, fur on an animal. Feathers off his belly are gonna tend to go downward and around. Off his head, they're gonna come from his eye, maybe go up a little bit and over this way. So you just find your starting point. Let's say we start right here. And these are just called straight stitches. They're sort of random. We're just putting them wherever we want his little feathers to be. And they don't have to be uniform, like right next to each other, but you do want to fill in. So we're just gonna start like his little head around his eye. Now many times I would start with the eye, and I'm gonna do a satin stitch on the eye. But once the eye is finished, or even if you decided to start with just all of his feathers and you're gonna save the eye for last, you could do a French knot for his eye. But a lot of people like to do the eyes black and then put a little white dot to kind of show a little, give it a little more, you know, personality. And so, you know, you're just constantly coming back up, making you could even come from this side and feed it back in, so you're, you know, for certain getting all that covered. And we just kind of put our back stitches where we think the feathers would lie. So on a little tiny bird, obviously he's going to have very small feathers, not really long, stitchy ones. Some people have asked about outlining their bird first. That's totally up to you. I don't really care to do that. I just like the way the feathers look. So I'm just bringing my little feathers out next to the ones I've already punched, or excuse me, not punched. I do a lot of punch needles too. Just stitching right here. Oh, and sometimes you get like a little knot. You just pull it back out and then kind of go slow again. And so in this case, you can kind of see how all the feathers just fill in the way. And then when the tail feathers, we go up on the tail feathers. On the little cardinal, of course, cardinals have that little crest on their head, so we're going to go up on the crest, and then we're going to come out this way. And cardinals, especially the males, a lot of times their wings have a different color to them, and so that's why we added a little bit of texture. On this cardinal, we have a satin stitch for the bud instead of a French knot, but then we included a French knot in the middle. And then we used the French knots here. We used a stem stitch here, leaf stitch, the 6-strand French knot, and then of course you can just go in with a little bit of white to surround the eye or put a dot in the eye like we did here. One other thing I wanted to show you, when you finish it, now you could just hang these on the wall and they would look super cute. They're just really adorable. They're tiny. Or you can finish the back like we did on all of ours. And so what we've done is we've included a printout of the words Bluebird of Happiness. You would print it off, figure out what fabric you're going to use for your backing, put it in your hoop, trace your words, stitch. We just use a teeny tiny back stitch on all of these. And then when you're done and you take it out of the hoop, you've kind of got this circle formed already. So then I just turn these over and I start here at the top with my needle. And I just go from the inside here. You're gonna have all this fabric that's folded over and you know, tightened together. So you're kind of stitching into that other fabric. And I'm gonna show you how to do what we call a blanket stitch. We just did that on the back of all of ours. So for a blanket stitch, you're gonna start at the top where you attach 2 of the fabrics, and then you're gonna move over like so. Bring your needle up like this. Okay, so we move over. Bring your needle up. I feel like I'm doing this backwards for some reason. I think I am. And back up. You just want to make sure that's around. So you can do it. You can also hold your needle like this. Find your spot where you're going to come up. Just make sure that thread is behind there, and there's your blanket stitch. And again, come up, make sure that's right behind it. And so what you're doing is you're just creating this blanket stitch all the way around to include the back portion, so that if you make these into Christmas tree ornaments, which is what this one shows, when it's on the tree and it spins around, you're at least going to have something on the back as well. So for your bird lovers in the family, that would be a great Christmas gift, to hand make little birds for their Christmas tree. You can even buy a tree and decorate it and hang all your birds on it. So those are all of our stitches. I hope that that helped you. When you get your pattern in the mail from us, if you purchase the actual pattern, you're going to get fabric, and you're going to get, you're going to put your fabric in your hoop, and then you're going to trace around the sticky, just press it down, and you'll start stitching. Once all of the thread is finished being stitched, then you're going to wet your fabric, and all of this will dissolve. And it might take a little bit, you might have to rub it, things like that. And then let it lay flat and dry, and then you'll just turn it over and press it. You might have to put a thin cloth or something over it so that you'll not, you know, burn any of your stitches. But just press it, and then you can put it back in your hoop and then create the back. So I hope that helps you guys. We are going to have a PDF that has every single bird in it. The PDF will also include the instructions for how to make the ornaments and the stitch book as well, if you're interested in that. And that will just be a PDF in our Etsy shop, Cozy Home Design Gifts. So check us out on Etsy, and thank you for watching. I appreciate it.